while we are still expecting more participants, but since we will have a very full panel, and so I would suggest we start, and I would just like to welcome you all to this webinar. It's a pleasure to welcome you today to a webinar on recipes for success, how to design, fund and implement short-term climate pollutant mitigation activities as Article 6 carbon market projects. And so I would like to then hand over to our moderator today, Andrea Bonzani from ETA, to moderate the session and also then present the panel. Thank you. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Seraphine. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone. I'm Andrea Bonzani, International Policy Director at AITA. For those of you who don't know AITA, we are a business association with over 300 corporate members from various sectors, and our mission is to promote carbon markets worldwide. So we work on all types of carbon markets, from domestic ETS and cap and trade programs to voluntary carbon markets, as well as, of course, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. As you know, Article 6 is comprised of two market-based instruments. The so-called cooperative approaches under Article 6.2 that provide, where the UN provides guidelines on accounting and reporting requirements, and then countries are free to design their own market-based approaches. And then there's also the crediting mechanism under Article 6.4, which is still in the process of being operationalized by a body of the UNFCCC. As you may know, Article 6 has huge potential to deliver emission reductions of greenhouse gases, and with these reductions, there are lots of co-benefits, including the reduction of short-lived climate pollutants. I can share a link through the chat with some modeling work that AITA supported that show the amount of savings that Article 6 can deliver in meeting the NDCs, and the additional mitigation that would take place if these savings were invested in additional action. This, of course, is theory. They are models and numbers, but to achieve that potential, we need to implement policies and programs to turn the potential into reality. And I'm very glad we have a panel of 3 speakers that are doing exactly that. They are practitioners working in the thick of the implementation of Article 6. So we will have Vicky Jansen, who's General Manager for Southeast Asia at the CLIC Foundation, which is the entity tasked with Article 6 purchases on behalf of transport fuel importers in Switzerland. Then we will hear from Dr. Daniel Kutu-Benefo, who's Acting Director at the Climate Change Unit of the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana. And the third panelist will be Dr. Karin Sung, who's Carbon Market Coordinator at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre and has over 20 years of experience in the areas of sustainability research, policy assessment, and capacity building. I will ask the panelists to provide an introductory presentation of no more than 10 minutes each, and that will leave us about 45 minutes for interaction and a Q&A session with the participants. But before I turn to the panelists, I'd like to invite Ange Benjamin Brida, who's Senior Advisor at the NDC Implementation Partnership, to provide some opening remarks. And I say I had the pleasure of meeting Ben 2 weeks ago in Abidjan, in his home country, where we co-moderated a great panel of ministers from the West African region during the West African Carbon Market Hub, an event that AITA co-organized and delivered 3 days of intense discussions and workshops on the implementation of Article 6 in the region. So Ben, I'll turn to you for your introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. It's also a pleasure to meet you again on this important webinar. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ben Brida. I'm Senior Advisor for NDC Implementation for Côte d'Ivoire, and I'm also co-lead of this hub the CCAC Planning Hub. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you, speakers and participants, to this webinar that will be focusing on the Article 6 of Paris Agreement. You know, the CCAC, through its planning initiative, now the Planning Hub, has been an example over the past 10 years of success in supporting countries to build a robust plan that integrates mitigation and also benefits related to sustainable development, such as clean air. So countries like Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, Mexico, Nigeria have now built a very sustainable and robust plan that are now at the implementation phase. And as countries, these countries are moving into implementation, in the hub, we open up the discussion on the ways of supporting countries to achieve sustainable implementation of the plan. So this discussion follow up the first discussion on financing NDC plan. So today we're going to move deeper into means of planning, but also of implementation through Article 6. And it's going to be a great pleasure for us to have these wonderful three speakers, as Andrea mentioned, that are really doing what is necessary on implementation side with regard to Article 6. So I'm going to leave now to the panel to hear from our great panelists of today and push you on our wonderful discussion. Thank you, Andrea. Over to you.
Thank you, Ben. So as you say, let's move straight to the panel. I'm going to start with Vicky. Vicky, you have been instrumental to the origination of the second ever program authorized under Article 6. This program will lead to a transfer of emission reductions from Thailand to Switzerland, and reduction that are being achieved through an electric public mobility program in Bangkok. So please tell us more about this experience. What is working? What are the challenges, and what learnings can be drawn for future programs, both in Thailand and globally? So over to you, Vicky. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andrea. Before we start, just let me know if I'm sharing the right screen and if you see my presentation or if you see something else.
We see your presentation now in full screen mode.
Okay,
so
excellent.
All good.
Perfect. Okay, all good. So hi, everyone from Bangkok. Thanks a lot, Andrea, for the introduction. Thank you to the CCAC and all the co-organizers for this webinar. It's an honor to be with all of you online today, and great to see also so much interest on the Bangkok eBus program. So maybe just to come back a little bit, I know, Andrea, you already mentioned quickly who we are, the CLIC Foundation, but it's a kind of a unique setup, let's say, for the Article 6. So we are a private entity. It's not from the government, but our mandate is clearly a legal mandate under the Swiss CO2 law. That law says that the motor fuel importers in Switzerland are obliged to compensate some of the CO2 emissions by supporting projects either in Switzerland or abroad. And we fulfill this legal obligation on their behalf. For the projects that are abroad, this is the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement mechanism that we're using. So we need a bilateral agreement between the Swiss government and a host country, so that we can work in these countries. The target or the estimations that we have according to the percentage of compensation we have to do for the part abroad is about 20 million ITMOs by 2030. So it's accumulative every year. And then those ITMOs that are sourced by CLIC Foundation programs must be implemented in the partner country. And then the ITMOs, or the reductions of CO2 emission, are then used by the Swiss government to help achieve parts of its NDC target under the Paris Agreement. because Switzerland has, as you know, quite an ambitious NDC. And then so since the beginning, actually, even Paris Agreement, I think they had foreseen that they would achieve part of it abroad. So now the e-bus, this is where everybody is interested in. So I think one interesting thing first of this project is that we negotiated this, or we discussed and developed this program in parallel as the Swiss and Thai government were negotiating the bilateral agreement. The reason why is the Thai government had since many years a great interest in Article 6, but they wanted to know very clearly what it would mean to engage into Article 6 collaboration with a country. So they wanted not just an idea of programs, but they wanted to know exactly what would be this program and what would be the benefits for Thailand, which I think was quite smart, but then also a bit challenging in terms of the negotiations. So where is the additionality in this e-bus program? So for Thailand, EV has been a top priority since quite some time now. And then if we look at the previous NDC, then the focus was mainly on individual passenger car. So there was no resources, money budget planned for e-buses, especially not the one that are owned by the private sector. So this is how we were a surplus to the unconditional NDC. And then the financial additionality, which is also very key for Article 6. Energy Absolute, the Thai company, the partner we're working with, is a quite big company. So one could think they have a lot of money, why they needed Click? It's because those buses don't receive any subsidies. So Energy Absolute is manufacturing those e-buses in a new factory in Thailand. They have not only replaces buses, but they have added routes. They have modified some routes so that they're better connected to other public transportation. They have a digital ticket. They have air conditioning, all this so that it makes a more enjoyable, let's say, route for the passenger, and all of this, the only return on investment that they have, it's the equivalent of about $50 ticket per passenger. So of course you didn't have we don't have a business model, and they would have not started the project without financial support. The money from Click, so from ITMOs, is to narrow the gap between the manufacturing of the e-buses and the replacement of an old ICE diesel bus. So there are about 2,000 buses already running in the street of Bangkok. 2,000 buses are actually more or less the scope of this first program that we have with Energy Absolute, and the partner, which partner was the carbon consultant South Pole. It's equivalent of to 500,000 tons of CO2 emissions, or ITMO, by 2030. Those buses have been running already since October, and both partners of Energy Absolute, together with South Pole, are now ongoing the first verification of those ITMOs for the buses that have been running from October to December 22. Then, of course, what is interesting for Thailand here, because those 500,000 ITMOs are going to the Swiss government, it's the co-benefits. So obviously, we have the reductions of air pollution, job creations because the factory is in Thailand, knowledge sharing, etc. Now, Andrea, you ask a bit what were the challenges. So I think obviously the first one is that it was the first program for Thailand, so everything was new. It was also a negotiations discussion on this program in parallel to the bilateral agreement. So moving so much ahead with this program, not being 100% sure, even though we were very confident that we would have the bilateral agreements, that was also some risk. And then we needed to make sure that with the additionality that the project would fit the criteria both from Swiss government and Thai government. So for Swiss government, it was pretty easy because there's not a positive list, but a negative list in the Swiss CO2 law. So we know that EV is a sector where we can work on. And then for Thailand, so they don't have an Article 6 strategy yet, but they have a carbon credit, I think it's management and guidance, mechanism guidance, that is a recommendation to the cabinet. So it means that every single program needs to be accepted by the cabinet. So it's the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment that is in charge of Article 6 has a lot of technical knowledge, especially the two departments that are in charge of Article 6. But outside of this, because it was so new, there was really, really no, I think.
Vicky, you've been suddenly muted.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody must have done
Okay,
that.
we
Yeah,
can hear
okay.
you now.
I'm back. Okay. Sorry. So I was mentioning the one of the challenges, the lack of knowledge about Article 6 from other line ministries that had to be involved at some point because the cabinet had to approve the project. So I think that was another one. And some maybe lessons learned for future programs. So first of all, it's actually a new challenge. There is now a new second revised NDC since some time. So everybody was very happy that Thailand has committed to increase its NDC target, but it also means that now they're working on a new roadmap. So we don't, and that roadmap is not available yet. So it's impossible to know at the moment which sectors would be eligible under Article 6. But we know that for future programs, so we've been discussing now with different line ministries, it's important to have a broader outreach, not with only the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, but to engage also the other line ministries so that they are aware that there is an Article 6 collaboration framework that they can also use to know what are their interests, their priorities, because anyway, at some point they will have to be involved. Private sector and financial sectors are also very key in Thailand, and it's a country where the private sector is it's a really private sector driven. They have extremely nice initiatives and then also vision to support the country in their decarbonization. So they really play a key role in this. And then insist, I think, on the co-benefits for the country. Sometimes when we talk about Article 6, there's too much focus on the NDC, which is very important. But when we look at those graphs, we see that all those ITMOs go for another government, and then country might think, oh, but what's in there for me? So if we insist on the co-benefits, number one, the finances, all the money that goes in the country, Click Foundation, we would be ready to spend up to 100 million US dollar in Thailand if there is the opportunity, if the government is willing to open it to new programs. So that's a lot of money that stays in Thailand because it goes for the private sector in the country. And there are many other co-benefits, of course. And now, so we've been looking at different sectors. We think there would be a lot of potential for the rice sector on alternate wetting and drying, on other EV projects such as e-trucks, but also green cooling, sustainable cement, etc. And in the end, it will really depend on the host country, on Thai government, where are the sectors where they think they would need our support. For Swiss government and Click, it's also very important transparency. So all the documents, be it from the bilateral agreements or also the detailed document from the eBus project, all the ones that have been approved are available online. So I can share that on the chat because it's not always easy to find those links. And I'm here for questions, but here just very quickly, if you need to reach out, please don't hesitate. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky, for the very clear presentation and also for the perfect timekeeping. We're right on time. I suggest people hold their questions for Vicky for the Q&A, and I will hear from the second panelist, Daniel from Ghana. Ghana, together with Switzerland, is a front runner on Article 6 implementation. Ghana authorized the first ever program under Article 6 at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh last year, and it will lead to a transfer again, to Switzerland, of reductions achieved through enhanced rice cultivation techniques. So Daniel, we'd like to hear more about this program, but also being from the government of a host country, we'd like to hear about the challenges and opportunities that a country like Ghana can see in Article 6, and perhaps also some recommendations for other developing countries that are looking to embark in this journey. So now it's your 10 minutes, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Can you see my screen? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. I wanted to start with a slide that summarizes all this conversation. And I will start with an outline. I will start with the linkage between our greenhouse gas emission trends and the mitigation potential for the country, the NDCs, and the role of Article 6. I'll talk about the progress made so far, and I'll focus on the rice projects and the way forward. However, I wanted to start with this word cloud. So this word cloud summarizes the 4 very important things. The first one is the long-term effort of the government of Ghana to achieve its long-term net zero commitments, and through the long-term emission reduction approach for the country, and the role of the NDCs and the role of Article 6. So I have captured almost all the concepts that are needed to be understood, and the linkages between them. So this is to give you what to expect when a country decides to venture into this business. It is also reflecting the operational issues about having to establish the role of carbon finance, the role of the carbon market, the obligations of the countries, and all of those things are critical, and they together create an ecosystem. And I thought I should share this with you. The first point I want to highlight is that the Ghanaian emission levels themselves are not large. I mean, it's not big. It's among the 5 top emissions in West Africa. Africa, we are told, is contributing between 7 to 4% of emissions across the world. Now, but the Ghanaian emission trend has almost increased by 80% over the last 10 years. And the key source of the emissions, as you can see, are broken down to the right. And you can see that agriculture play a key role. It is the 3rd most important source of emissions. And when you break it down into the various activities under agriculture, livestock, crops, and soil, crops is the 3rd most important source of emissions in the country. And within the crops, rice alone accounts for about 360 gigatons of emissions in the country. And you can see that within the rice cultivation practices, it occurs in 3 ecosystems: upland, and then the irrigation systems, and also the rainfall systems. And the irrigation systems account for about 51.1 thousand hectares of areas that contribute to the rice production in the country. And that is where a lot of water is applied on the field through irrigation. The rest is mainly rain-fed. So this is the broad context. Now, when you look at the Ghana's NDCs, we projected that the emissions will almost hit 100 million tons by 2030 along the BAU, of which the NDCs is aiming at reducing around 64 million tons, which then still remains around 36 million tons outside the NDCs. Now, within the NDC commitment of the 64 million tons, about 25 million tons are unconditional, and then the 39 million tons are conditional. And Ghana has clearly articulated that out of the 39 million tons, 24 million tons is available for Article 6 transactions. So that is what is within the NDCs. But what is outside the NDCs are emissions that are covered in the GHG inventories, but not considered in the NDCs, and they are seen as those that are outside. That includes the emissions from agriculture, and that is where the rice cultivation effort that we are trying to promote water management focuses on. And the essence is to increase the ambition of the NDCs beyond what the NDC scope is. So the focus of the rice cultivation project is to see how we can reduce the emissions that are outside the NDCs and increase the ambition of the Ghanaian NDC. So again, to give you broad context. Now, I'll jump from here and come back to this later on if there's time. Now, what is the progress so far? The government of Ghana in 2022 adopted a national Article 6 framework, and that framework stipulates the processes and then the arrangement for implementing Article 6 arrangement in the country, which covers Article 6.4, 6.2, and the voluntary market as well. Currently, we are converting the framework into a law, and the law has passed a cabinet approval and is now with Parliament. The next item to report on is that so far we are engaged in 4 bilateral engagements, and the one with the Switzerland government was signed in 2020 November. Our engagement with Sweden and Singapore has led to the negotiations of an agreement which has passed cabinet and is now with Parliament for approval. And then we are currently negotiating the 4th one with South Korea. We have also established an institutional arrangement that backs the implementation of those agreements, and we have a carbon market office and also a carbon market committee that is mandated to implement the requirements in the framework. The 4th one we are happy to share is that we have also established our own Ghana carbon market registries that is performing the registry functions. So far, we have onboarded about 15 projects on the registry system that as we have it. There are also 34 projects at different stages of development as we speak, and we have already authorized, and as the moderator said, 1 project about 2 years ago, I think, and the authorization includes letter of authorization and what we called the authorization statement. The statement is made public and the letter of authorization is considered as confidential. And then in addition to the authorization, we have also successfully published with the Switzerland side the initial reports. We plan to complete 2 authorizations by December, again under the Switzerland agreement. So we are yet to develop any official project under the Sweden and the Singaporean one. The 2 additional authorizations would be for cook stoves and also the other one for composting. So we hope that by the end of the year we would have finished with the 2 additional authorizations for composting and also for cook stoves. So far, this is the overview of the pipeline of projects, and as you can see, a chunk of the projects is looking at cook stoves. We have some amount of some in HFCs, waste to compost, landfill gas management, biogas. So there are a lot of methane mitigation interventions in the pipeline, and that is also good to report. But then that is also in line with how we can use the carbon market to achieve ultimately methane mitigation as well. So this is to again give you the structure of the institutional setup. We have a carbon market committee that receives and approves authorization of projects. The carbon market also prepares, ensure that it receives application for authorization. It evaluates the criteria for authorization and also reporting and also the corresponding adjustment as well. We also have established a committee that also advises the Carbon Market Committee. We also have established a carbon market registry. As I said, that already has data around for 15 projects that we are working on. So let me focus on the RISE project. So the RISE project is, as I said already, is the first project that was designed under the Ghana-Switzerland Agreement, and the purpose is to promote the adoption of alternative wetting and drying for rice cultivation. And the argument is that under the traditional rice cultivation in the country, farmers virtually engage in continuous flooding, and that leads to methane emissions. And the adoption of the AWD practices, of course, would adopt an intermittent flooding. That in itself would improve water efficiency as well. And in doing so, the avoided methane will then be monetized and compensation will be paid to the farmers, and also, very importantly, export the avoided methane and apply corresponding adjustment to any amount that has been exported to the southern side in exchange of the compensation for the farmers. So far, the plan is to work with 11,000 farmers and covering about 20,000 hectares in the country. And when we are able to achieve this, that will cover around 78% of the total rice cultivation areas across the country. And we expect that the activity would lead to about 1.1 million tons of emission reduction that will transfer to the southern side. And this is being led by the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and the UNEP as well. Here are some milestones. The project development document is completed. It was validated. Authorization was granted by both the Ghana government and the Switzerland side last year. Initial report has been published online, and right now we are focusing on implementation, and it involves onboarding of rice farmers, training of farmers, and adoption of the AWD practices by the farmers. And also, it comes also with the monitoring aspect of it, which is quite so. Currently, apart from the implementation, there's also an issue of monitoring. We are considering the approaches, the possibility of using a satellite-based or a remote-based application for the monitoring of the water levels and other variables. We are required by the Switzerland side to do one-time field measurements of methane, which we have agreed to do before the first monitoring is done. And the data that is collected on the field is uploaded on an online data system, which is supposed to aid in the verification of the data before issuance is done. So here are some results. So far, we have onboarded 8,200 hectares of rice farm in the country, and we are still onboarding. A private company called Jackbone Group of Company themselves alone has onboarded 21,000 hectares, which in itself is being developed as we speak. The key areas of operations of this covers about 4 regions: Volta, Greater Accra, Upper East, and then the Eastern region. And as you can see, we have prepared the monitoring manual, the training manuals, and on the right side, you see some of the farmers being engaged as part of the onboarding process. What you see here is a major device called the piezometer that is used for the measurement of the water levels as well in the farm. I wanted to show you some videos, but I'm not sure if there's time. If there's time, and then I'll come back and play you the videos about how the training is being done, how the farmers are being trained on the adoption of the AWD, and also some feedback from the farmers as well. So if there's time, I'll come back to this.
Daniel, I don't think there's time. If you can share a link in the chat, participants can watch it after the webinar. Thanks.
Sure. And then this is the pipe and sensor installation that is being considered. So the pipes that we are going to insert in the rice farm, we would want to attach a remote sensor to allow us to remotely connect the data to the online system. So just to conclude on the way forward, we are continuing the onboarding of farmers. We expect to deliver the first amount of ITMOs to the Southern side by second quarter of next year, and that will then trigger payment to the farmers. We plan to prepare our first annual information to the UNFCCC next year, April 15th. What we have seen is also that most farmers have adopted a wait and see attitude to see how the first cycle of payment will look like. We have also been approached by some insurance companies who also want to develop insurance products to help reduce some of the risk that is coming with this practice. We are also monitoring the impact of this practice on yield. We also have discussion around the pricing of the ITMOs over time, which is linked to the quality of the ITMOs and also as well. Generally speaking, and this will be my last few points, moderator, is that the fact that the preparation of the bilateral agreement or the bilateral engagements are time consuming, right? It requires long hours of negotiations, and it requires on our side a 3-tier domestic approval process, which is time consuming and requires a lot of stamina. Number two is how to ensure that the principles of conservativeness and the prevention of double counting are really implemented on the ground. It can be a bit of a challenge. The other issue is also how to manage risk and uncertainties. We are carefully managing how we would avoid the risk of overselling and how we would use authorization to minimize the risk of overselling and respect the principles of additionality. The last point is also about the risk of national reputational loss, because then if this doesn't work and there are issues with this, then the government has to deal with issues on its public reputation. We are also dealing with expectation management on the side of farmers, on the side of politicians and everybody, to ensure that we rein in expectations of this arrangement. The last point I want to highlight is that there is a heavy reporting requirement. Right? Once a country decides to engage in this, the country must have people who can help in ensuring that all the reporting requirements are met across board. And that is what I wanted to highlight, because I think that earlier the speaker mentioned about this issue about capacity is also low, and therefore we need to enhance capacity. So this is just to give you a summary of what we are doing on Article 6 in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. A really interesting presentation, and I think your conclusion is a great segue for the next panelist, Karen Olsen. Karen, we heard about success stories, but also about some of the challenges and the capacity building needs that countries have to engage in Article 6. So please, can you provide an overview of where we are in terms of capacity, what countries are getting ready to engage, and what UNEP in particular is doing to contribute to these efforts? Thank you.
Yes, I'm sharing my slides.
Yes,
and
we can see them, not in... Okay, now they are in full screen. Perfect.
Good. So I come from the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre, and as you said, I can tell you about what we're doing to help countries, but also private sector, implement Article 6 carbon markets. A few words about who we are, because we are quite young, with the name of Copenhagen Climate Centre. The centre was launched in 2022, and some of you may know us from many years back, 30 years back. We were called UNEP Research Centre, then UNEP DTU Partnership, established in 1990. But it's the same setup, the same people. I've been there myself for 20+ years. So just the new setup, we support on implementation of Article 6 carbon markets, but also on transparency and policy making. We work in these 3 strategic areas. We're around 70 staff and work also in the sections on mitigation analysis, data management, institutional development, adaptation, technology transfer. And this is under markets. And our program now has these 6 activities on capacity building, which is building on science and technical analysis, and we are supporting countries also on policy advice for implementation of or development of Article 6 strategies. And we, of course, do that in cooperation with many partners, both other support providers. And particularly, we make an effort to share information through outreach activities in the regional events and also online. I'll tell you more about this CDM and Article 6 pipeline. So the CDM pipeline has existed for many years and has and is tracking what are the activities in CDM under the Kyoto Protocol. And now we are looking at which CDM projects can transition to the Article 6 mechanisms. And we recently produced this YouTube video to, you see the link here, to introduce what these databases and analysis, what information you can find here. But to give you a little bit of examples, particularly related to this webinar on the short-lived climate pollutants, the black carbon, methane, ozone, HFCs. We see from our pipeline that around 25% of the registered SLCP activities are eligible for transitioning to the 6.4 mechanism. And for other non-SLCP activities, it's 48%. So it's a lot of details here. I'm not going to go into all the numbers, but in total, we have 10,000 plus registered CDM activities. And we have, according to the rules, 4,500 are Article 6 eligible. And out of these numbers, you see that the SLCPs, we have around, for strictly methane, it's 6%, methane together with the other gases, 7%, and then the HFCs. And in total, this makes up 220 million tons of CO2 equivalents that are eligible for transition. So this depends on which countries and project developers request transition. They have until, this is a period of 5 years, 2021 to 25, where this can happen. But I think that's knowing that the background of this is that the short-lived climate pollutions are the most important anthropogenic contributions to emissions and are responsible for up to 45% of current global warming. I've taken this from the CCAC website. So quite important, the work of the coalition. We also have more data on the breakdown of the 136 Article 6 pipelines that we find so far, according to activity types, energy efficiency, solar energy efficiency, that are the most, where we have the most activities, and by region, we have the most in Asia. And as you heard from Switzerland and Ghana, you are the front runners. We have the most, from the buyer perspective, we have the most projects from Switzerland and from Japan under the joint crediting mechanisms. I hear that not all of these are going for authorization, but if there's someone from Japan, maybe you can tell us more about where they stand, the JCM. But to give an example of the kinds of capacity building we provide, this is the Integrated Assessment for Article 6 project funded by the European Commission, which is 3 years, started this year and will run until 25. So from the bottom, the boxes, the activities are that we have a toolbox of support, the technical modules, such as assessing decarbonization pathways. How can, like we heard from Ghana, what kinds of mitigation activities can have, and also the sustainable development impacts. How can the government decide which ones to keep and which ones to sell based on such analysis? And that analysis, we're taking a South-South approach. We will then support 3 countries for in-depth assessment and use of the tools. And we then also share the knowledge beyond the 3 countries. You see the outcomes. Countries have tools, data, technical capacity. And for the impact, it's that Article 6 is used for achieving NDCs, but also raising ambition aligned with long-term strategies and net zero pathways to achieve the global goals. And the SPARK project, Supporting Preparedness for Article 6 Implementation, this is running over 5 years, funded by the German government, implemented by the Global Green Growth Institute, leading the consortium. And then we have 3 private sector partners and then us, UNEP. And we also here have a toolbox of support. We're supporting 4 countries, Colombia, Pakistan, Thailand, and Zambia. And the toolbox, I'll have another slide on this, but I think what is special about this support program is that we have this community of practice where we work together with universities, academics, young people to build knowledge and skills long term. We often see a lack of the human resources and skills. So the intention here is to take a research-based approach to building capacity. This is the toolbox, 6 guides. They will come out before the COP 28, before Dubai. Not all of them, but several of them. It's supporting on how to develop an Article 6 strategy, how markets can contribute to ambition raising and promoting transformational change, the system change to net zero and sustainable development. Host country governance frameworks. How does Article 6 interact with other carbon pricing instruments? How to develop pilots and transactions and contracts. And overall, we have these at the top. Those are our 3 work packages: medium, long-term emissions planning, governance frameworks, and mitigation activity development. So government, private sector, our main partners, and academics. And then some smaller projects that have been on, and here's one on promoting sustainable development. This is an initiative. It started with the gold standard in 2017. Now it's with Wuppertal Institute and the Secretariat. So our focus now is to support the Secretariat develop the Article 6.4 Sustainable Development Tool, which should be finalized by the end of this year. So we've heard several times this is very important for host countries. It's not only the money, but it's also multiple other benefits, sometimes called co-benefits, that stay in the country of implementation. And it's also safeguards against negative impacts. So this is a technical support initiative, but also when the tool is there, we can provide capacity building for using the tools. And it's 3 years. So last, if you want to know more about the different topics presented here, we have YouTube videos and webinars. And the latest one is the introduction. This is at the bottom. Introduction to the CDM and Article 6 pipelines. We also have podcasts. We work with Pakistan. We invite Pakistan experts to talk about what is happening in Pakistan. So I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Karen. A lot of information and also a lot of follow-up materials through the links you provided. So we now have just below 40 minutes for a Q&A session. I invite those who want to ask a question to raise their hands using Teams, and then they can. Okay, I see one. Before I ask participants to take the floor and ask their questions, there was a question for Vicky in the chat. I will not read it out. All of you can read it. But Vicky, do you want to answer those 3 questions actually from
Yes.
Ben?
Yes, with pleasure. So the first question was about mitigation outcomes, surplus to Thai unconditional NDC. So that was the first project. As I mentioned, there was no Article 6 strategies yet. So what initially CLIC Foundation Energy Absolute, we were interested in buying, selling the whole amount of ITMOs from the probably 3,000, 3,500 e-buses. So that would have been between 1 million and 1.5 million ITMOs. But the Thai government set a cap at 500,000 for this program. And that was its strategy to counter the overselling risk. So it means all these 500,000, they are going to go to the Swiss government. Thailand will not keep any of these ones. But in the guidance carbon credit mechanism, I always forget the full name, it's actually mentioned that they reserve the right for a fair share. And we'll know later on once there's a strategy, I guess, if there is a potential fee like Ghana or a share that is required. The second question was about the price, how we calculate it. So ITMO pricing is based on actual cost. So the carbon finance is expected to make a program economically viable or for the financial additionality. And we cannot disclose our price. It's confidential, but usually we target about $20, $30. On average, we paid 22.30 Swiss franc, which is more or less the same as USD per ITMO across the whole international portfolio. So you can check also our last annual report. And the last question is about capacity building, if there was a package to support the country. So it's not the mandate from CLIC for capacity building. The Swiss government has some capacity building or technical assistance program via the State Secretary of Economy, and it's actually implemented by UNDP for some of the countries where Switzerland has a bilateral agreement. For Thailand, it was decided that there would not be that kind of support because there were already quite a lot of actors, including Sparksys. I hope that answers all the questions.
Thanks. So I see 3 hands plus 2 questions on the Q&A. So I'll alternate. First on my list is Gia. Apologies if I mispronounce your name. Please take the floor.
Thank you. I think I already discussed a couple of times. I think a very great presentation on this Article 6, but I'm more interested in the 6.2. That's Vicky is involved in. I have 2 questions. The first question is, what is criteria for you to decide how many ITMOs can be traded when you produce between the host country and the buying the invested country? And the second one is what is the amount that is produced, emission reduction produced, is heavy exist or excess the conditional NDC, or is possible for the country that hasn't had the ETS or the let's say the trading scheme developed framework, legal framework for the trading scheme developed yet can be participate in the different project for the this in Article 6 under the Article 6. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the first question was for Vicky. Maybe Daniel wants to comment as well.
Yes, so I understand it's more a general question. So the number of ITMOs that will be transferred or would agreed, you have criteria from both government, from Click Foundation. From our side, we have a minimum for Thailand of 500,000 tons of CO2 emissions reduced accumulative until 2030. For other countries that have maybe smaller countries, then we have a cap that is a little bit lower. So not a cap, a minimum volume such as 250,000 tons of CO2 emissions. So this is on our side, but then Thai government for the e-bus SEDOC also a maximum cap at 500,000 for this first e-bus project. We don't know what's going to be later on. So this is really depending on, and I can only speak for Thailand. I don't know about all the other countries. I'm sure Daniel knows better for Ghana. And then the second question, I wasn't really sure. I had the impression it was a bit similar. It was also about the total volume of CO2 emission reduction. How much is transferred to the Thai government or not, then again, I can only say that for this particular project, the whole 500,000 will be transferred to the Swiss government. That has been agreed, but we don't know about future project. It will depend a bit on the Article 6 strategy from the country.
Yeah, and there's no specific rules mandating how much can be transferred and what the split between the host country and the buying country should be. These are details that have to be agreed by governments bilaterally, and the host country can implement its own strategy and decide how much they want to sell as they find beneficial for the NDCs and general development strategy. I see we have a lot of questions, so maybe we take two from the floor now. So Björn Ole and then Fred, please. And if you can introduce yourselves, so we know your institution and your position.
Thank you. Yeah, Björn Ole Sander, senior scientist at the International Rice Research Institute. I've got a question for Daniel, and the question is, how do your rice farmers benefit? So in a bit more detail, how much do the farmers get, either in dollars or a percent share, and how are these payments facilitated? Thank you.
Okay, and there's a question, Daniel, there's a question along the same lines in the chat. It seems that you have a lot of success training farmers. Who is delivering that training? And are you also considering these lessons learned to then reduce methane emissions in the livestock sector? So I said we would take two questions, but perhaps Daniel, you can answer these, and then we'll take more. Over to you, Daniel.
Okay. Thank you very much for the questions. The rice farmers are to benefit in two ways. One is the actual cash transfer to them. The amount of cash transfer is calculated on the basis of the emission reductions, verified emission reductions. Okay, verified authorize and transfer the emission reductions per hectare. All right, that's the first one. So they are to be paid cash transfer through the banks, through a digital platform. And then number two is also that the farmers also are expected to reduce the cost of water. You know, the farmers they pay what is called the service fees for receiving irrigation water. So the expectation is that the amount of water that is received and paid for would probably reduce, and that will save some cost for them as well. So these are two direct benefits that the rice farmers are expected to benefit directly.
And can you share how much a farmer gets per ton of CO2?
I'm not able to share, but it's less than $10 per ton. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the cost of training is paid for by the project, not by the farmers. The cost of onboarding is paid for by the projects, not the farmers. The cost of the monitoring equipment, ideally, are supposed to have been paid for by the farmers, but there's an arrangement to work around that. So, largely speaking, the advanced cost of transactions is not borne by the farmers. Yes. Yeah. The other one is I think there was a question regarding. I think I missed the question, but there was another question. If you can kindly, Andrea, can kindly.
Yes. So it was a question about the training. Who's training the farmers, and whether the skills can be transferred to the livestock sector.
Yes, the training is done by the Savannah Research Institute. It's called SARI, Savannah Agricultural Research Institute. They develop the training manual and they train the farmers. There is also an expert advisory team that provides on the farm support system for the farmers in case they encounter any challenges. We have not considered any project in the livestock area yet. We have not.
Thanks. So Fred, thanks for your patience. You may ask your question now.
Thank you, Andrea and the team. Thank you for the excellent webinar. I would like to thank all the presenters. My name is Fred Onyai. I work in Uganda as a national consultant for the short-lived climate pollutants and with the on behalf of CCAC. My question goes to UNEP, and based on what has been presented from Thailand and Ghana. First of all, I see yes, you have got a toolbox that you have developed and a number of guidelines. But at the same time, you mentioned that there's a project yet in the pipeline, and you say the countries, the partner countries, are yet to be determined. I think I'm ambitiously trying to get from you. What does that mean? Do you have projects for member states that will benefit from the use, first of all, from the development and the use of the toolbox through capacity building program? Then number two, is there any possibility of having some tailor-made programs for peer-to-peer learning, especially based on the best practice already seen in Thailand and Ghana? I say so because, for example, in Uganda, there's a lot of efforts by government to establish and operationalize e-mobility, which I practically saw in Bangkok just this year last year, and at the same time my colleague from Ghana they seem to be not simple, but they're doing very well in the areas of sustainable agriculture, specifically sustainable rice production, which in Uganda is very dominant, and actually it's one of the areas that is degrading in a lot of wetlands. So is there any possibility of UNEP and the partners and the partner organizations having a kind of tailor-made programs where countries learn, farmers learn from fellow farmers I mean the project practitioners, not necessarily leaders and scientists, but the project practitioners and the scientists and leaders combined, so that it's replicated in other countries. Because now you can see the diversity of capacity, but there's a lot of imbalance at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Karen, over to you to answer these questions.
Yes. So, yeah, thanks for the questions. Starting from the last one, do we have the tailor-made programs for peer-to-peer learning? We have in the new European funded project integrated assessment for Article 6. We do have in one of our work streams that we want to facilitate South-South learning. I think that's what you refer to as peer-to-peer training. And we do that in two ways. We do it the most in-depth way that we take the experience from some of the front-runner countries, and then we, through co-development of the modules in the toolbox, we both have some generic tools, and here for I think that was another question, how to use Article 6 to achieve NDC and long-term strategies. So here we take a modeling approach for countries specific, analyze what are the decarbonization pathways to achieve NDC goals, but also the long-term goals, and what would it take to go to net zero. So that's an exercise like here you get the numbers, also sector specific. We can help assess what are the mitigation costs. We heard from CLIC that this is important for price setting because it's sector specific, it's project activity specific. So this analysis that we provide the toolbox, and then we do capacity building tailor-made to country needs, so that experts in countries can learn how to use the models and calculate also beyond when the project ends, that you have the human resources and capacity to keep doing and updating your numbers. And such analysis is also the basis for government to do their Article 6 strategy, which you don't want to, as a host country, to sell your low-hanging fruits because you have your own targets to meet. So with this kind of analysis, host countries can see where is it that they get the most benefits out of the cooperation with the buyers, either for technology transfer or for attracting costs. I mean, attracting finance, results-based finance. So that's the in-depth approach for the peer-to-peer learning. And then we also have, you could say, broader outreach, which was some of the, this is the database, have a look, get in contact with those that have developed the projects that you find interesting, that we have webinars and YouTube videos. So it's not country specific, but it's more general.
And Karen, can you share who the 3 countries that will use the integrated assessment model be? Has that been decided yet?
Very soon, not yet decided.
Thanks. Next question, Chris, please.
Thanks very much, Andrea, and thank you to everybody. I think this has been really excellent. I have a question for Vicky and a question for Daniel. Vicky, you mentioned that in Thailand, you were looking beyond electromobility and the alternate wetting and drying, electric vehicles for heavy duty vehicles and green cooling and some others were looking like promising sectors. I was wondering specifically, what was it about those sectors generally and in Thailand's context that make them promising for Article 6 funding, and how does the CLIC Foundation and perhaps local partners go about determining those sectors? And then my question for Daniel was, among the CCAC community, there's been a huge amount of work done on SLCP planning, and it's extremely exciting to see that Ghana, who's really championed that SLCP planning work, is now moving towards implementation, particularly with rice. I was wondering, Daniel, whether the work that you've done with CCAC and the SLCP planning work has helped in operationalizing Ghana's Article 6 framework and projects, and what advice you might have to other countries who have done that planning work and are now looking to move towards Article 6 projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vicky, you want to answer that question? And also one we have in the chat, someone's asking about the source of electricity for the e-buses in Bangkok and how that is factoring into Article 6 and ITMO accounting.
Yes, thanks a lot. So maybe I go with the one with the source of electricity first. So it comes from the grid. Charging station are linked to the grid. So it means some renewable energy, but not a lot. This is also some constraint from the current regulations in Thailand. But I hear a lot that the directions that at least the previous government and recommendations that went to the government are should change this. So in the future, in the MADD, so in the design document that we agreed, there is a commitment from Energy Absolute that when it's possible, they will also use renewable energy, such as solar PV on the charging station. And for Chris, so questions about the kind of eligibility criteria, or how we come up with different sectors. So we are open to many more. Basically, we just have to we have to use first as basis this negative list from the Swiss CO2 law, but after that, it's supposed to be from the Thai government or for any partner countries. As we don't have a clear list yet, what we have looked at is that it's projects that would have little chance to, from our current information, to be under the unconditional NDC. Projects where we know that there's a high interest from relevant ministries, projects that are quite easy to understand. So because maybe it's still the beginning. So if it's too complicated, then we might lose people on the way. Where we have strong private sector partners. It doesn't have to be big ones, but to some that are known also from the government. So it's the contact might be easier. Projects very important that could start soon. So with partners where they already have partnerships or have identified carbon consultant, for example, and we know it could be projects starting next year because we have this time frame by 2030. So if the project start in 27, then we have it's going to be very hard to reach those 500,000. Yeah, so I think that's more or less why we were mentioning a bit those sectors, but we really depend on what's going to come up in this NDC sector roadmap, hopefully by COP28. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Vicky. Daniel?
Yes, thanks, Chris. So, Chris, so there are a number of things that we consider, right? We have spent a lot of time to look at the linkages between the long-term emission plan for the country, the role of the NDCs in achieving the long-term emission commitment, and the role of Article 6. All right. And we have, as you are aware, we have also linked the SLCP mitigation action plan and how it can be dovetailed into the NDC commitment. So we have the long term, the medium term, and the role of carbon credit schemes to achieving that. We have clearly indicated that one of the options for financing the SLCP mitigation measures potentially is a carbon market, and that is why we are carefully focusing on methane mitigation in agriculture, in waste management as well. And as I said earlier, our next authorization, which is scheduled for the next few weeks, will be for a compost project, it is seeking to convert solid waste to compost, and that is our next authorization in this direction. So we have carefully teased out the high-level linkage between all of this and how we can use carbon market as one of the means of financing them. Right? So it's just one of the means of financing them. Currently, we have made available around 24 million tons that is available for us to transact in the carbon market, both with the voluntary market, the Article 6.4, as well as the 6.2 as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And we just received a question for you in the chat. How is the MRV system operating in Ghana to ensure transparency of AWD adoption for mitigation achievement in rice production?
There's a heavy requirement for transparency in MRV, and as I said, the design of the MRV system for the rice project is based on an existing CDM methodology. The Ghana side and the Switzerland side also further agreed to strengthen the monitoring requirement, and is now we are required to do field measurement, right? Field measurement of methane. So it's not going to be based on calculations. We have to do field measurement. So the first one is a field measurement. The second one is the use of a remote sensing approach to do continuous monitoring over time. And three, very importantly, is also the collection of non-spatial data into an online system. Right? And all of this is to help facilitate the third-party verification of the performance of the AWD when the time is due, before issuance happens and before transfer happens. So there's a very strict MRV system in place to move from to be able to cross over to issuance. The last point is that generally, as I said, we have carefully linked the AWD emissions to the national greenhouse gas emissions. So how much we authorize and how it affects the national emissions, and the emission balance is very, very crucial for us. Right? So we have carefully set down to do this. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We still forget to unmute from time to time. Last question from the floor, Matthew, please.
Hi, folks. Yeah, look, I just wanted to come back on the prices being talked about, because people are looking at this Article 6 system and they're criticizing it for not being terribly fair. So I'm just wanting to get the panelists to talk about how having a higher price for all of the work that needs to be done to reduce these emissions or remove them should be more fairly rewarded. Vicky, how do you come up with the $20 to $30 range? And when people go and talk to the people selling for that price and realize that they're really not getting a fair deal, doesn't that put the whole system in disrepute?
Okay. I understand this is a question for all panelists. So
all panelists, but I think Vicky was willing to engage on the prices, so maybe she could just help us understand why that range is the target range. I do realize there are not many buyers at the moment.
Hey, thanks for the question,
yes.
Vicky.
Yeah, okay, I'll try. No, so the price is really calculated on the amount that financially is needed by each program. So it depends on each program. And so the owner of the project will calculate how much financially support they need to make the project happen. And without that amount, they would not even launch the project. So that is the first number. And then they have to say how many ITMOs the program could have, and they come up with a price. And then this is a price that we discuss. If the price is higher, it's not that it's a no, but we are, so we, as I mentioned it before, we work on behalf of the oil importer industry in Switzerland. So it's a kind of compliance market. We have this obligation to buy as many ITMOs as possible and as fast as possible. We have a certain budget for it. So if suddenly we spend much more on one project, then it means we'll have to compensate with some other projects that are much cheaper. So we have to be careful also with the balance of this price. And then the other thing is that a majority at the moment, a bigger percentage of the projects we have to support are in Switzerland. And for this, we pay much more in Switzerland. So it wouldn't make sense to do project abroad if the price is the same as where we would pay in Switzerland. So, but we also understand and then know that Article 6 is not is a great tool for as a financial mechanism to support decarbonization, to support private sector, but it's not always the right tool. So it works in certain contexts, and this we always make it very clear also with the companies. The process is also lengthy. It's quite a lot of monitoring that are necessary. Those MADD with validation, verification, the standards that are requested are quite high. So usually the price is supposed to be higher than the international voluntary market, but it really depends on, I think, each project. So it's also up to the, I think, the project owner to decide what is the best option, if it's to request maybe a client finance, etc., or if it's Article 6, if it's VCM. So there are different tools, and depending on the type of project, I think this is also important to put in balance, and then the compliance, what is mandatory also for us to achieve the target that is requested by the law in Switzerland.
Any other comments on this point from the panel?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Matthew. Matthew, I couldn't agree with you more with this comment that the 2 points, the fee level or the price level is a very important conversation that must be had, and secondly is also about the fair share of the distribution of the fee levels, right? Particularly when the governments are to authorize and transfer these units, the resulting compensation ought to be used in a way that it doesn't, and it ultimately supports the implementation of the NACs. Ultimately, that for me is very important. But we have a very simple attitude, all right, that this market is an open market, and we are encouraging our private sector to be informed by the different prices that are being quoted in the market, right? So assuming that there are options, right? Whatever goes into the price determination and the choices of where they sell their ITMOs would be the option of the developer. So we are encouraging them to take advantage of the different price quotations in the market and maximize the returns on the project. So we are not sticking to any monopoly. We are sticking to the need for them to take advantage of the options in the market. And that is why we are engaging with 4 countries. And I can tell you that the price range varies. It varies from, I mean, I've even heard people quoting $45 per ton, right? So if it's an open market, let the market then determines who sells to who and at what point.
Yeah, and the point I'm making is that no one is really comparing the investment options that people have in a rational way, because the poor old farmer there, who's probably drought stricken, is suffering all the costs of generating this 1 ton of carbon and then getting less than $10 for all of that effort. And the flip side of this market, if you look at the global picture, is that you've got oil companies getting huge profits from a massively rigged oil market. And if you're an investor and IETA and others want this scaled over the next few months at COP28, if you're an investor, it's not even in the money. There's no compelling reason to go and put money into these projects when that is the structural, the market structure of this, is there? I'm just asking questions for anyone to answer, really.
Any reactions? And maybe we're getting to the end of the session, so we can wrap this up into concluding remarks. Does anyone want to react to Matthew's point?
Yeah, so just a comment on the poor farmers and what do the local communities get out of the carbon trading. I see that discussion happening in two sort of different arenas. One is that the share of proceeds by the host parties, that it's in the Article 6 strategy. So what's the percentage? Is it 50%? Is it 2%? Is it 5%? What should be the benefit sharing mechanisms? How could the host parties put in place criteria for that in their strategies? Also to safeguard the reputation of the market, because we know from CDM that there were cases of all kinds of negative impacts on local communities. And we also see that a whole lot from the voluntary carbon market, when safeguards are not in place or when indigenous people do not benefit. So I think that the awareness is there, and it's there under the Integrity Council and the voluntary carbon market. It's also there as part of the SDG tool, which is not yet ready. But what I hope, I don't think we've really seen it yet, but regarding price, other benefits that sometimes co-benefits, sometimes sustainable development benefits. But now that we're moving towards better knowing what they are, sometimes even quantifying the impact for sustainable development, it's possible that those could also be priced. We just remain to see what the demand is. I mean, in the compliance market, it's tend to be sort of the old way of thinking about markets, that you need the least cost mitigation options. And it's a challenge. How can you combine least cost with ambition racing? Because ambition racing is expensive. You don't get high quality credits for the least cost price. So I think that's a discussion to have. And right now it's not in the open. We hear from CLIC, it's confidential. So there's a lot more to be said about price than what we currently know.
Okay, thank you, Karen. On that note, we are running out of time, so I'd like to thank the panelists and thank all the participants, especially those who asked these very interesting questions. And I'll hand over to our host, Seraphine, for the wrap-up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, thank you very much for this really fascinating and rich discussion. And so I just want to, on behalf of the CCAC Secretariat, thank all the speakers and the participants, and also you, Andrea, and Ben also for his opening remarks. We will make all the information available through our website, the presentations, and I also want to mention that this webinar is part of our national planning work at the CCAC. So within the national planning work, we are providing support to countries on emission inventories, on mitigation strategies, on project development. So I would really encourage you all to reach out to us, and we are also making tools and guidelines available. So also one of our key partners here on the call, SCI, is also part of that effort, and Ghana has been also a long partner in that effort. So So just to really encourage you to join us, and also the other hubs. So Sandra Cavalieri, my colleague here on the call, is managing our sectoral hubs. So just to invite you to join us and to really be part of this CCAC planning and sector community. So thank you again all, and for all the rich discussions and presentations. So looking forward to engaging further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.